welcome to our a very warm welcome to our very own agent team. Obviously, our leadership team. There's a number of our leaders on this call this evening. I did mention Javi already, and a couple of our other leadership members. Always an honor to have such an incredible support team structure here locally in South Africa. And then to the influencers, Bill Campbell, I welcomed you earlier. He was the gentleman that influenced me to join eXp Realty. Bill's based out in Canada, and always a great pleasure. He's a huge influence in terms of attracting agents into our organization, and for that we are truly thankful. To also the other influencers, Liz Nanell, I saw earlier, Nadia Hurt is on the call, and a number of our very top agents. We also got special guests, obviously agents that are out there having a look in, and someone would have influenced you to actually look at eXp Realty. We're not going to talk all about eXp Realty tonight. I think there's going to be a lot of learnings, a lot of education. There's going to be a lot of takeaways. And we're so thankful that Leo can take a bit of time out from his vacation to spend a bit of time with us here locally in South Africa. So once again, a very warm welcome to Leo Pareja, our eXp Realty CEO. What's very important, I've got a superstar on the show, and he's my co-host, the man with the biggest smile in the world, Ndzimande, and Sia is going to be asking the questions and posing the questions to Leo Pareja, and certainly a great honor to have Sia as our marketing manager as part of eXp Realty South Africa. Folks, my name's Andrew Thompson, and I am the country leader for eXp Realty South Africa. I've been in this position for the past 4 years, and I've really seen eXp grow as a company from literally 23,000 agents 4 years ago, and having had the privilege to realize another 20 countries being added, making up the 24 countries around the world, having the privilege to witness going from 23,000 agents to 89,000 agents across the globe. And it is certainly an honor to be part of the fastest growing real estate company in the world, the largest independent non-franchised real estate company as it stands, and I believe the best compensation model this world has ever seen. We look to the future in real estate, and the future really looks good for an incredible company. I do remember Glenn Sanford mentioning 100 countries, 10 years, 1 million agents, and we want to be part of that journey. And what an honor to be part of that journey, a privilege to be part of the team, and a great excitement for the road that lies ahead. If we bring it back to eXp Realty here in South Africa, and Leo, I think you'd really appreciate this. You know, we started the company 4 years ago and literally got our license 3.5 years ago. And in a 3.5 year period, we've gone from 0 agents to 1,250 agents within our South African operation, a leadership team of 17 of us supporting our agent team. It shows how good the technology and the tools are in terms of this really incredible agile company that we're operating in. And I sort of worked out some numbers. This is a personal view. We've come down from the 6,000th largest real estate company in South Africa to possibly number 4, if not number 3 in the country in a 3.5 year period. And I think that's really admirable, not only to our leadership team, but most certainly to the people that are on this particular call. To our agent team, they've only been incredible. The support we've seen right from the start, and the amazing people that we have had the ability to attract influential people, good producing agents, and obviously 15 months into operation, we became cash flow positive, a profitable company, and we carry 0 debt from a South African point of view. So folks, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Sia Ndzimande, who's going to be hosting questions through to Leo Pareja. I'll dip in every now and again. I'll pose a difficult question, Leo. I'm only joking. But Leo Pareja, our eXp Realty CEO, and Sia Ndzimande. Thank you very much indeed, and I hope that's a good welcome for you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Andrew, and thanks for the welcome. And a big thank you for Leo for taking the time out today just to be with us and just chat through. I'm always amazed at the willingness that our leadership team has every time we have a Let's Talk, whether it's Wendy, Forsyth was on, Glenn, everyone's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So it just speaks to the culture that flows right from the top going down, which is amazing. Just so easy to organize things with our leadership team. But without further ado, Leo, I just want to give, you probably heard from Andrew, the context of the call is largely there are EXP agents here with us, but there are other agents looking in. So that's kind of the context that we find ourselves here. So with that, I'd want to maybe like rewind right to the beginning. And I'd like you to maybe tell us who is Leo Pareja? Who are you, your personal life? What do you like doing? Who is Leo Pareja?
All right. Well, I'll just well, thank you for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you guys, and I do take the same amount of pride in making myself available for agents. So, you know, I probably spend almost half my days talking to agents, whether it's one-on-one or 1-to-1,000 or on stages. I am in Asheville, North Carolina today. We head back home on Monday, and this will be an interesting kind of random factoid. We left with my wife and kids on May 26th, 2 days after school got out, and we have not been home. We will be home Saturday, just in time to make it for the first day of school. In that time period, I've been in 5 countries and 12 cities and seen probably tens of thousands of agents across all those places. So the US to Canada to the UK to Portugal, Spain, the south of France. I spent a good amount of time on the West Coast, so all over the place, but all with my family. So my family's literally all that matters to me. And so if I can't do my duties as CEO and also be with them, I would have said no to the opportunity with Glenn. So I do mostly during the school year 1-day trips, right? So I try to limit myself to where I'm back home for, you know, even if it's past dinner, at least be able to kiss my little ones goodnight and sleep in my own bed. And then then the summers I pack in as much as I can. And that's kind of the beauty of the virtual company. And I truly think that this format is the future. There would have been nothing Glenn could have offered me to get me to move to Bellingham, Washington, because I live in Miami, Florida. So for me, and that's part of the beauty of what we do as real estate agents, is helping people find their place in the world. Miami is literally perfection. I'm Colombian, hablo español, me crié en Latinoamérica. And if you're Latin American, I truly believe Miami is the capital of South America. So it is the perfect place for me and my family. Not to say that it's the perfect place for everybody, but for my lifestyle, my background, I'm an avid spear fisherman. So I'm in the water all the time. Almost all the seafood we eat in my house, I shot. And so for us, it's perfect. But I got into the real estate industry at 19 years old while a sophomore in college. I joke that I was born into this business because my previous occupation was high school. So I've been an agent. I've been a broker owner. I've been a team leader. In 2010, I was ranked the #1 Keller Williams agent in the world. I would sell between 400 to 600 homes a year. So I have the strange distinction of being the only CEO of a publicly traded real estate company that actually is one of you. I'm still a licensed broker. I've been a licensed broker for 23 years, and I'm quite proud of it. Especially in this moment in time in the US where, you know, our world got flipped upside down. In the last 10 days, I've talked to the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Motley Fool, Market Watch, and tomorrow I go live on CNBC. And I truly think I would not be in a position to help navigate this with you guys if I had not been in your shoes. I think that, you know, sitting at the kitchen table and talking to buyers and talking to sellers is what's necessary for leadership in this industry. So, you know, when shifts come, I can shift with you guys. But everything in between, if you can do it in residential real estate, I've probably tried it. So whether it was selling single family homes, luxury, sold a couple buildings, sold some dirt. I built stuff from the ground up. I started a private lending business that scaled to probably be a top 20 lending business in the United States. And then I started a software company that got to be the fastest growing MLS technology in the United States. I got to about 1.1 million agents, which was about 85% of every agent in the US. And then I got a cold call from a guy named Glenn Sanford via a mutual friend. And he said, you know, what are you going to do now that you've sold your companies? And I said, I'll probably start another one. And he said, do you have the idea? And I said, I don't, I'm kind of burnt out. And he said, why don't you come hang out with me for a while? And when you get the idea, I'd love to invest in your Series A, and then I'll bid you farewell. And that was 2 years ago. And he made me CEO before I had the opportunity to say anything like that. So I'm not going anywhere. I am one of you. I'm, feel born and raised into this industry that I love so deeply. And right now I am fiercely defending it in the U.S. as these plaintiff attorney lawsuits have kind of really turned our world upside down from the agent standpoint. And it's probably been the most interesting leadership experience of my life, because we're trying to I got quoted in CNN this week calling it a grand social experiment, right? Like, we are fundamentally changing how things are done from one day to the next, and it happens this Saturday. And I'll tell you, retraining 74,000 people on how to do things, and that's just our people, because then they have to go out into the wild and interact with other people. So it's been a fascinating time and ride and moment in history. But this is what I do, and this is the only thing I've ever done, and I love it dearly, and I'll protect it fiercely.
I love that. I love that. And when you were speaking to Glenn, and obviously when he made you the offer, what did you see in EXP, and what made you accept this new adventure in your life?
So the interesting is I'm born and raised in it, and I'm very well versed in all aspects of it. So I've actually, in my journey, have held leadership positions at NAR and NAREP. I've done a lot of citizen lobbying. So post financial crisis, I was actually in the White House representing realtors when CFPB and Dodd-Frank and all the financial regulations came into place. So I deeply understand organized real estate from a different perspective. And my last company, I raised close to $48 million, had a big board backed by Wall Street private equity. And I was pretty much done with organized real estate. I kind of had enough. MLSs are very political and somewhat painful to deal with. But when I actually turned down Glenn the first time he called me, he offered me to be the chief technology officer. And I said I could play one on TV, but I don't actually like tech that much. And so he invited me to come hang out with him for a couple of days, and we just got to know each other, and we actually got along really well as human beings. And so, and I think that's probably the most important thing I look for when getting into business with folks. And it was funny because I told him, I was like, I've never, by the way, fun fact, this is my first job I've ever had in my whole life. I've always been the founder and CEO. And so I told him, I was like, I don't know how to behave. I'm not sure that I know how to be corporate. And he's like, that's why I need you. He's like, I think he called me a full-blooded entrepreneur, and I can't change my behavior. And that's why he wanted me to come here. And he said, if you see anything that doesn't make sense, you have my full permission to break it and do as you see fit. And so, it kind of hard to say no to that opportunity. And the way he positioned it, if I have an idea, I can go leave and start it. And obviously he probably knew what would happen is that I'd get excited and fall in love and dig deep.
I love it. And you touched on this one on the first question, and I just want you to give maybe some context to us South Africans, because we may be a little bit far removed. I mean, we see it on social media come through the topic. It's the NAR settlement. Can you give us some context of that and how we've been proactive regarding that?
Yeah, so context is my favorite word in the English language. So I always almost start. So if any of you come to EXPCon, I give a keynote, and it's called context. So I love it that you pose it that way. So organized real estate in the United States has been kind of in one way or another somewhat been functioning the same way for about 120 years. So since the early 90s, we've had buyer agency. And so agency once upon a time was just seller representation. And then there was an introduction of something called sub-agency, where the commission was split with another agent, but it was purely seller representation. So there was no fiduciary responsibilities at all to buyers. And then in the early 90s, there's the introduction of buyer agency, where they really split out the representation. So buyers truly got fiduciary level of representation. And so our MLSs in the United States had what was called a unilateral offer of compensation, and it was required by being a member of the MLS. So if I took a listing, I would offer a commission, and let's say it was 1%, 2%, 3%, they've always been variable. Once I stuck it in the MLS and it was advertised, it was guaranteed, meaning that, like, let's say at the settlement table, the seller was like, Andrew didn't pull his weight. Instead of 3, I'm going to give him 2. What Andrew would do is he would let the property close, not interfere with the transaction, and then take it to the MLS through a process called arbitration. And like there was about a 99.9% certainty he was getting his money. Because that was one of the rules of engagement by being a member of the MLS. So about 4 years ago, or actually going back to 2018, there was some, I don't know if you guys use this term in South Africa, but we call them ambulance chaser attorneys, right? The ones that, in my opinion, are very unscrupulous and don't actually care about the consumer. They're just trying to get paid. Got with a bunch of homeowners and created a class action lawsuit. And the reason I'm quite passionately hateful of them is because I don't think they care at all about the consumer, and I think they're just getting a very large check and riding off into the sunset, and not really did anything for consumers. But these are the new rules of engagement, and what I've been saying a lot is like life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. So if these are the new rules we have to work with, I have very big feelings around it, but that doesn't mean that I have the ability to complain about it. I have to drive a ship with 70,000 souls in it in the US, and we need to still serve families. So what we did is we created a bunch of unique paperwork to make it simple and straightforward. And so the things that happen starting Saturday, the MLS no longer disclose buy-side commissions. It's deleted. It's just, it no longer exists. And buyers are now required to enter into a buyer representation agreement prior to being able to even see a house. And so that buyer representation agreement has to have a start date, an end date, and what the fee will be. And the agent cannot earn a penny more than what's in the agreement. So previously, working with a buyer, you know, I met him at an open house. I met him as a referral. I would say, listen, I'm gonna take care of you. And then when they say, what are you gonna pay me? I'll say, don't worry. Whatever the seller's offering, they'll accept. And depending on the market and the property, it'd be somewhere between X and Y. And so the buyer was not committing to having to have any extra out-of-pocket expenses. So what's happened now is that you have to agree to what you're willing to earn ahead of time. So mechanically, what I think is going to happen is sellers are still going to pay for it. It's just going to be part of the negotiation. Some might offer it. Some may say put it in the offer, because the reality is, like, if I'm advertising a property for 500,000 and you offer me 400,000, that's a very different offer than what was advertised, right? So, you know, they may be willing to pay a commission at X, but not at Y, or they might be willing to pay less. And so what's super confusing is the rules that came out are somewhat contradictory. And so I actually did what is now, you know, I think it's going to be the right call, and the media and a lot of our competitors are copying exactly the rules we came up with, which was to go one step further, because the Department of Justice has been very involved in the whole process. And so even if it was not included in the settlement per se, our federal government has had strong opinions as to what we should do. So, you know, we had to kind of make a decision, a business decision, and come up with rules that were probably a little bit past the settlement, just because we don't want ambiguity, because as you well know, we were all served in a very, very expensive lawsuit. And part of my job is to make sure it doesn't happen again. So agents in America, starting Sunday morning, in all 50 states, some states started August 1st, some states started July 15th, can no longer find commission on the MLS, and will now have to have an agreement signed by the client prior to seeing the first house. So again, a pretty big departure from the way we did things. In some countries, like, none of this seems new or familiar. It's like, okay, that's just kind of doing business the way it's been done. And so there's a couple of things that I'm saying a lot to the media. One is we're going to experience something I've called the messy middle. I don't know how long it'll last. It could be 6, 12, 18 months. So like a perfect example is, you know, I'm in a lot of chats with our agents, and one agent said, hey, I've already had the first one where I presented the contract to a buyer. They got scared. They called their dad. Their dad said, well, I've never seen that before. That's not how the process works. And so they backed out of seeing the house. And so that's actually one thing I've been seeing a lot on media. It's like, listen, there's going to be this time where not only consumers and agents need to adjust, right? Because we're human beings, and, like, you know, I tell everybody, feedback loops of echo chambers are probably the most important thing, right? Like, if you're going to buy a car or get a haircut or do something that's physical to your appearance or meaningful in money, you normally wait for a referral from a trusted advisor, whether that's your parent, your friend, your coworker. And so I think we're going to have this horrible adjustment period where buyers are going to say, hey, I want to see this house. They're like, sure, here's the agreement you need to sign prior to showing the property. And that's different, right? So if someone's a first-time homeowner, they're going to call whomever, they're going to go on Reddit, they're going to go on the internet. And so I think after 2 or 3 months of that breakage, we'll get through it. funny enough, my family and I saw some land out here in Asheville because this place is beautiful, and I used an EXP agent to show me the property, and she sent me the buyer representation agreement prior to even looking at raw land where no doors are unlocked, right? Where we were just pulling up to farmland. And so, like everything else, it's purely educational. And the really cool part is, again, about 3 weeks ago, it was extremely loud because I think I was probably the most hated person in the real estate industry in the United States because I came out and made some very strong decisions for the whole industry, for our company. But the cool part is now pretty much everybody followed it. We've had entire associations change their contracts to match our position as a company. And we open sourced all of our documents and gave them away. So there are tens of thousands of independent agents not with EXP using our paperwork. You know, now again, a couple of weeks after the avalanche of hate, I'm getting really, really nice messages from all over the country thanking us for being leaders and for giving it away and for helping us lead through the industry. So yeah, I think there's all kinds of cliche sayings that come to mind, but you know, rough seas make skilled sailors and all that other fun stuff, right? Where in moments like this is kind of how companies and opportunities are made. And oh, by the way, I am predicting a lot more chaos. I think this Saturday, a lot of people are looking at it as kind of like the end. And I'm like, no, that's the beginning, right? There is going to be so much chaos. I'm predicting double-digit destruction of small to mid-sized independent companies. There's going to be more litigation. There's going to be a lot of fear. The progress of the agent lifespan in the US normally starts on the buyer agency, because listings require a lot of skill from both a scripting and an experience standpoint. And so buyers normally super easy starting point. But I truly believe there's going to be a portion that can't cross over that chasm. And the crazy thing is 12 months from now, when someone gets their license, they won't have any of this context, to use the word you started with, because this is the way, right? Like, you know, when I describe the listing process to somebody and say, imagine doing that on the buy side, it feels weird, right? Like when I tell my agents, imagine showing up to a seller's house and saying, hey, I'm going to list your house. And they ask me, how much do I owe you? And I say, well, we'll see when we get the offer. And how long am I going to have this on the market for? And till we get tired of each other, right? Like it seems crazy in reverse, but that's how we worked with buyers. So part of this is just, this is a new way. And once we're all there, and again, did I want this? Not one bit. But now that we're here, I always try to find the positives in life. And the reality is this is going to upskill our entire industry. People who can no longer, the agents who cannot articulate their value will go out of business. Full stop. So, and at scale, the entire industry is under siege, if you will. So this is where I'm really clear. And I just had our earnings call last week. I don't know if any of you are financial geeks with me, because I love that stuff. But I'm the one who talks on the earnings calls. And what I said to them is, we are uniquely positioned to survive better than everybody else. Right. So, you know, there's some analysts who are like, oh, it's the end of the real estate. I'm like, look, if it's an extension event, then that's one thing. But most of the time that does not happen. And we will be the net winner, because if there is 10, 20% double-digit destruction in the residential industry in the US, we will be the net winner, because we have an asset-light model that can pivot much faster and better than everybody else. And the coolest part, in my opinion, is the model that Glenn built, in the sense that whatever the new normal is, whatever the revenue per transaction is, or the new number of total transactions, we can adjust our model, which not every company can say that, right? They're the companies that have heavy brick and mortar, like Compass Real Estate, for as an example, has $509 million of outstanding lease liabilities across all their offices, right? Anywhere Real Estate, Coldwell Banker, Central, all that family companies, even more, right? So, you know, if something happens dramatic, I can turn the knobs and move the levers to a point to optimize the business for the new normal. Will it be painful? Absolutely. But this is the one thing I say, and what I'll say on CNBC tomorrow is, people move because of human condition. You know, They move in with someone, they have kids, don't have kids. Death, divorce, and a couple promotions along the way dictate the vast majority of human moves. And so those humans will still choose to be represented by a local expert to hold their hand.
I love that. And just before I hand over to you, Andrew, I know you've got a question. There's just a remark. I love how proactive you are and EXP is, instead of being reactive and seeing what other people are going to do and then falling in line and kind of copying that. I don't know if you wanted to add something there, Andrew, or can I go?
Yeah, Leo, you must have a big net out there, a big net in terms of amongst that chaos. And it looks like a whole lot of people will be coming EXP way. I'm pretty much sure of that. So is there a net out there? Do you have plans in that regard? Is there influence around other agents in the USA in particular in terms of a strategy?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, offense is the best defense, right? The fact I gave away our forms, if a third of the US is using our paperwork, who are they going to call when they're looking for a new home? So there was one competitor who actually he's with one of our competitors, and he actually did a 30-minute podcast on how good our paperwork was. And about halfway through, he said, don't get confused for 1 second. Leo's a very nice guy, but he is recruiting every one of you. Right? He's acting as your broker before he's your broker. So if you're thinking of switching and you're already using your paperwork, don't get it confused. He is recruiting every last one of you.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly. Obviously we got a number of influencers on this particular call. The likes of Steve Johnston, we've got Kalpana Soni, we got Nadia Herter, Liz Nanell, Bill Campbell. There's a host of really influential people that are attracting really good agents into our organization. When you joined EXP, how did you join initially, and what sort of tactics did you adopt in terms of influencing agents to join EXP at that particular time?
So I actually don't have a single person in my rev organization, but I argue that I'm probably the best recruiter closer this company has, because I go after the biggest teams in the United States and Canada. So I will, so I've kind of broken down attraction in a very nerdy scientific way, because that's just how my brain works. I feel like there's 5 avatars that I've seen successfully grow attraction, and I always talk about understanding how you're wired as a human being is probably the best thing you can do as early as possible, and then leaning into your gifts, and your natural God-given gifts. So there's not a right or wrong. I'll tell you which one I am, but that's just based on who I am. But the ones I've successfully seen work at scale are, the attractor who's on social, right? So kind of a lead funnel on YouTube or Instagram. The event-driven one, right? Like Brent Gove's probably the best example of that with his build events all over the world now. Your production-based, like, let me just show you how to sell more homes. So you don't actually even talk about recruiting. You talk about just like, if you're at 10 homes, let me get you to 20 homes. If you're at 50 homes, let me get you to 100 homes. The coach, right? So we can have 4 or 5 avatars of examples of really good coaches, especially in the US, where they had a coaching product. So it was like $1,000 a month for 2 calls and this set of content. But if you join EXP now, it's part of your offering. And the 5th one, I would say the more traditional recruiters, who, in my opinion, are like the ex-office managers, right? The people who are used to doing 10 cold calls a day, 5 appointments a week, 2 onboards a month, like at a Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, or just like a former broker owner recruiter who is a hardcore recruiter. And again, I don't know that one's better than the other. I think, like, when I sold homes, I sold 400 to 600 homes a year. I didn't do a single cold call. To me, cold calling is about as fun as playing in traffic. Like, it's just not how I'm built. I don't like the rejection, but like, I'm really good at numbers and complex stuff. So I went after B2B business. And during my 15 years selling real estate, I represented Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the FDIC and hedge funds and developers and builders. And I'd build these complex models and showed them, loss severity and return on capital and that kind of stuff. That makes me happy and I'm good at it. And so most agents probably don't want to do what I did. And so I think recruiting is the same way. The way I personally recruit, because I personally focus on bringing over the biggest teams. And if you've noticed in the last 3 months, I've literally brought over the #1 team in every state, and I have like 6 more coming. And that's my personality, and that's how I grew up. And I was one of them. Like, I was in the top of the Wall Street Journal for 2 decades. And so the way I kind of do it is I call them. I'm like, hey, I see you're playing high school football. Do you want to join the NFL? And let's talk about putting the right jersey on you. And so I know how I think. I know how I competed. And so for a lot of them, I almost, shit talk them into joining us, because it's like, hey, like, it's cute, you're number one over there, but that's pee-wee football. If you want to play in the NFL, let's have a conversation about leveling you up. And again, personality based, my background, I speak the same language as them. It works really well. And I think the unlock in life is really understanding how your God-given gifts work and leaning into them, right? Like, the school system, the whole world sucks. Like, you're taught to work on the stuff that's a weakness. And when we grow up, it's called leverage, and I pay people to do the homework I didn't want to do. So it's, find out what you're really good at, and then just really, 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 like, talking and speaking in public is something I've done for a long time, but I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on public speaking classes, on, media training. Like, it's not an accident I sound the way I sound. I've studied it. I've listened to it. I'm hyper aware of filler words. I don't say, I don't say, let me be honest with you. There's like this whole science to the stuff I've leaned into. And when you see a finished product, you make an assumption. It's like, oh, they're luckier, they're naturally talented. And it's not. It's picking something and leaning way deep into it.
Leo, I think from our side, and I think a lot of our influencers will lean towards you in terms of assisting with those closings, etc. And we're willing to channel that through and make sure it sounds like you're incredible in terms of closing deals and closing the big deals. And we got some quite nice interest here from a local South African point of view. So we'll certainly take you up in that regard. What really intrigued me about the 5 things that you did mention was around agents that are successful in their own right, and attract people into their sort of audience and become an agent attractor through their very own successes. Now, for you to have done as an agent 400 to 500 sales in a year, how did you go about that? That's quite an amazing story for me.
So I looked around and saw the top agents, and it was funny because I go to the conferences and I would say, well, I don't know how to do that. And I don't want to do that. Like for example, I would see the mass marketers, the people that did TV, radio, and they would generate thousands of top of the funnel leads who then had to be incubated, who then went to an appointment. And these top agents would say, I go on like 4 listing appointments a day. I prospect this many hours a day. And then, I have like a 40% close ratio. And it was just like hyper competitive each time. It was like very programmatic. And I mad respect for it, but that's just not who I am. So for me, I was much more interested in building. So in my peak, I probably only had 10 or 15 customers at a time, which doesn't sound very logical. But if you think about that, they happen to be hedge funds, or they happen to be developers who were building out 38 homes, or they were the federal government disposing of foreclosures. I had one customer who would send me 150 transactions in a 12-month period that would close. And so, again, I was not the normal agent. On some of the investors and developers, I as soon as they acquired a property, I helped pick out the color palette for their renovations. I'd say, put in this level of granite, spend this much money on appliances, spend this much money. Like, I determined their repair scope, because it was my job to say, if you spend 40,000, we'll get a 1.5 or 2x return on capital spent, versus let's just, lipstick on a pig, get it safe according to FHA standards and put it on the market, sell it as is, where is. So that level of delivery of services is not, you're not going to beat me because you sent out some mailers and went on a listing appointment. I was deeply embedded into their workflow. I actually sat down with one developer and showed him, it's like, hey, if you have this in-source, I'll do it for a flat fee per transaction. They guaranteed me 10 or 15 transactions per month. They were beautifully renovated homes that I spent professional photography on, and that created a funnel of qualified buyers, right? So there's ways of thinking way outside the box to the business that, for me, it was like, okay, I have about a 30% margin on a flat fee. I can hire someone on basically a salary position. They close 10 to 15 deals a month. And then I had a margin that I was happy with. And I actually showed the developer my books. It's like, what you pay me is equal to or less than what it would cost you to insource it, but then it's a variable and you don't have to have the liability, and then I'll take it on. And so if you're super transparent and speak at a high level with business people, you'd be surprised the deal structures you can create.
Yeah, absolutely love that, Leo. I mean, I come from a development background, but I also spent a short bit of time with Keller Williams and then transitioned into EXP as you did. And you just your sort of arrival into EXP, I'm not quite sure when that was, but why did you join EXP? Was it the culture? Was it the values? Just talk a little bit about that. I know you built a great relationship with Glenn Sanford, and that was most important to you. But your arrival into EXP, was it a good experience?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, mine was very different. I was personally recruited for for to lead the business, which is a different path than most people would have into the company. But the thing that kind of made it super obvious to me is all those top people I competed with for 2 decades were all here, right? So I remember when Glenn introduced me at a big agent meeting, he was like, "Hey, this is Leo," and everyone's like, "That's our friend. We know him. Like he's one of the known entities in our world." So for me, in a way, especially coming from Keller Williams, it was coming home, right? So a lot of the top people I am currently taking from Keller Williams, they don't feel like, oh, I'm showing up somewhere. It's like, oh, okay, finally Matt came over. Finally Kyle came over, right? It's like, oh, I know all these people. I've known them for many years, and funny enough, a lot of them I met in Gary's top mastermind, which I was a part of for many years.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. We were in conference today, Sia and myself. We were at Real Estate Investor Summit, and it's such a small business, really, real estate, and you create many friends, not only here locally in South Africa, but across the globe. And I think the biggest thing in our business is obviously around relationships. And it's these relationships that we're creating on these Zoom calls, into the road shows, into the events, and collaborating and assisting and helping each other. And it's been a tremendous learning curve for me in terms of that, in that respect, with EXP. And it certainly rubbed off from your experience into the organization. And for that, we're truly thankful. Just last question, Sia, before I hand back to you. For outside agents looking in, Leo, we've got individual agents that are guests on this call that have been influenced by another agent within EXP to be on this call. What would your advice be in terms of looking at EXP, and why should they look at EXP in a nutshell?
So, the slogan we're really leaning into in the US is EXP is where the pros go to grow, right? So to me, the most interesting thing is, I fundamentally believe this. I don't think the company makes the agent. I think agents provide a hyper local service, and I think this applies all over the globe, to families making a super expensive decision that's highly infrequent and highly emotional, right? And I have not been to a single country on this planet where it's not full of friction and complexity. I believe that in our functional lifetimes, you will need an expert to hold your hand. There's not a single place I have found yet where there's a website and you click, and people do it without people. And if there was a way to have done it, it would have happened. The last decade saw $100 billion all over the globe try to remove agents from the process, and I don't think they're going anywhere. So agents are extremely valuable, and I fundamentally believe they are the market makers, not the company. What companies are is a collection of human beings, right? So you can go to any website and copy paste the menu of services and say I am the next EXP. And I'm tired of the flattery because we have like 27 of them in the US. But the reality is, what the magic sauce of any company is the people. And so I feel that we have the best and the brightest minds in the space, and sharpen steel, steel sharpen steel, right? If you're amongst other very high level thinkers and folks that are pushing the envelope, and by the way, I do think AI is going to be disruptive to real estate. But the way I see it is, agents who use AI will put the agents that don't out of business. And just like I've seen two moments like that in my 23 years in real estate. One was the internet, right? And we were able to look at listings in the MLS and in real time. And the second one was mobile internet, once I got it in my phone. Those are the two moments where I was already a practicing broker, and I was like, uh-oh, this is different. And in both cases, it accelerated time. So what used to take 2 or 3 days could now happen in an hour. And I think AI is that next evolution, if you will. So I do not think AI is going to put us out of business and people will use AI to buy and sell homes, but the agents that do will put the ones that don't out of business.
Fantastic. Yeah. Sia, back to you. A couple of just one or two closing questions from your side to Leo, and then let's open up to the floor. I know there are people on this call that would really just love to pose a question through to you, Leo. And there's been one or two comments in the chat box. Johan Lotte,
and I am running out of time on my end, so I just want to give you a heads up that I'm going to have to be hanging up soon.
All right. So one question from Sia, and then a question or two from the audience. Thank you.
Perfect. Mine's just quick, Leo. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How do you respond to someone who says EXP has hit its peak now? It's only downhill from there. What's your response to that? What's your outlook on EXP's future going forward?
I think we're just getting warmed up. We're fully scaled. We're profitable. We have the best platform there. As I describe EXP as a platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. And so, we're the single largest independent brokerage in the world by agent count and transaction count. The next, I like Glenn's visionary goal, but I'm very tactical. So the next goal for me is to become the largest brand in the world. So I think right now that's probably 150, 160,000 agents with Keller Williams, which again is not the same because they're independently owned and operated. But I like to round it up and say the next stop's 200,000. And the exciting part to me is that I think the biggest opportunity in growth is actually abroad. So I'm going to be spending a lot more time with Felix and Glenn because I truly think our growth comes from international, which being a brokerage and being one company makes it 10 times more interesting than when franchises do it, right? Like I was in EXPCon Europe and someone stood up and shared, I was in Spain. I put a message in workplace chat. I got a referral from someone in Pennsylvania. The deal closed on a date. Part of it was fulfilled in euro. The other part was in dollars. And there was no going back and forth for one company to wire money from the other company. It's like, we are one company. And so the unlock of referrals and managing the total pie is crazy. And I'm so excited what lies ahead.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sia. We got a question from Steve Johnson. Steve, good to see you.
Thanks, Andrew. Leo, thanks for your time here today. So my name's Steve Johnston. I've got quite a large team in South Africa. One of my goals is to head into the United States. I know that you're trying to go global. Well, I'm trying to go reverse. I'll see you in the air because I'm really wanting to get a team growing in the US. I'm partnering with a technology company there that's already a chosen service provider for EXP, and we're going to create a bespoke product that we're going to take to the sort of upper level of productive agents in the States with a really good technology solution. Obviously, EXP's benefits of being with the company, my own training, and building the team here in South Africa. But then there's a sort of fourth pillar to what we want to bring, which is a solution to this whole NAR thing that you were discussing with us. Now, I don't want to try to be an expert in something that I'm not an expert in, but I would like us to be able to plug agents in as part of this offering into a seamless kind of safe haven for them on this whole issue. So my question to you is, I know you're giving all the paperwork away. Is there something that you have kept in-house that we can use as a genuine recruitment incentive to bring agents to EXP because they get this thing that's kind of pre-packaged and makes them safe, And
yeah,
and sorry, Leo, I just wanted to ask if so, who do I chat to? How do I plug agents into that and create part of my marketing with that message?
So I don't think this was the moment to put kind of front doors and gates to that need, because as an industry I need the other agents to get with the program so they can actually be enough functional operation. Our 70,000 agents represent, I think, 4.2% of every licensed realtor in the US. So it's still a small fraction. We need to cooperate with 95% of them. But what I think the secret sauce is our operational excellence, which is what I've been obsessed with. So I think we have the best broker team in the business. We have the most well-trained folks in the business. And I really think that the question you're Steve, will kind of unfold itself over the next 6 to 12 months. I truly, truly believe there is going to be, you will continue seeing headlines of 100, 200, 500, 1,000 person companies joining us, because I think the pain will get so massive in the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, I'm actively negotiating and talking to folks with hundreds of agents who are like, I just don't want the liability anymore. I'm done. Here, you take it. I'll plug in. Like the one big announcement we had last month was Matt DeLune in Missouri. He's 1,100 homes sold in 2024 is what he's on track for. 68 agents. He was an independent company. And when he called me on July 1st, he goes, by July 23rd, I will have my license moved. It's either going to be you or one of these two competitors. But by August 1st, I will no longer have this liability. I want to move all my open escrows, all my pendings, all my actives. They're all going to be somebody else's problem. And I will gladly pay you a fee for the support. So I think that's going to play out at scale, Steve. So my thought process is I'm just going to give everything away and lean into education and be the calming voice in the storm. And you know, some people think the industry's piloting a Titanic, and I think I'm piloting a world-class battleship who's armed and ready to go.
So Steve, my suggestion would be reach out to Leo and have a further discussion in that regard. I think it's a great idea as to what your strategy is, and yeah, good thinking in that regard. Let's take one more question, and Leo, we know you got commitments there, and you're on vacation at the moment as well, so we respect that you need to have time for your family. Thank you very much indeed. And one more question from anybody in the audience. Thank you. All right, I think that's it for today. Guys, thanks very much to Leo Pareja, CEO of eXp Realty, to Ndzimande, my co-host, such a tremendous co-host, and good to have him down here in Cape Town with me. And certainly, guys, just remember, we're going to have the Let's Talk shows. I think the next one is on the 12th of September, if I'm not mistaken, Sia, and we're confirming further special guests of ours through until the end of the year. Our roadshows take place from the 24th, 25th, 26th of August onwards in the Durban area. And most certainly, if you're an eXp Realty South Africa agent, be there. We got Andre, Lydia Foster, who are going to be at those shows, talking artificial intelligence and how our technical systems all tie in. Folks, my name's Andrew Thompson, Leo Pareja, Ndzimande. Thank you very much for a tremendous show. You very much appreciated. Cheers, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers for now.
Thank you,
ciao.
Leo.
Bye.